Hello and welcome. My name is Nio and I work for the Mendocino County Library. I'm going to go over a few things as we begin. Curing salmon is the third of our 4 cooking demonstrations, which are part of our Book to Action program, featuring the book 6 California Kitchens, and programs focused on local foods, recipes, gardening, and more. This program is supported by the U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services and the Library Services and Technology Act administered in California by the State Librarian. If you prefer the speaker view, please click on the view on the upper right corner. We're asking everyone to please mute unless you have a question or a comment. We're recording this session and we'll make it available on the Mendocino County Library YouTube channel. Today's cooking demonstration features John Farais, a Northern California chef who specializes in cooking with plants native to North and South America. Today, he will be demonstrating curing salmon. The recipe will be shared in the chat, along with a link to a survey we would love for you to fill out after the program completes. Before we get started with John, I'm going to show a short video of his company, Indigenous Edibles, to give everyone some background on what John is all about.
Thank you. There we go.
My name is John Farais. I've been a chef for 20 years. I work with ingredients native to the Americas. Pre-colonial is what I like to concentrate on as far as the native foods, because that is where the true flavors and the true artfully designed foods came from, was from the Native Americans. Native foods are actually very healthy.
This field of mustard and radish very well could have been propagated by the first people of California, and hundreds of years later, it's still with us. So we must carry on with the way they did it. We don't take everything in a field, and we always leave it for Mother Nature to be able to repropagate what is growing.
Indigenous Edibles was started as a vehicle to promote my teachings, my dinners. I created a lot of menus using native ingredients. Here comes the fun part. You want to make it look like a gnocchi? You don't have to. I think that's probably the most fun way to do this, is to pull these with your fingers and create your own dumpling. Part of Indigenous Edibles is about foraging. Like we use the acorn flour. I forage for those acorns. It's about what foods are edible. The weeds, that we kick around and see all the time, some of those are edible. I found out also that I couldn't really do the food without some kind of historical context. And then I just delved into the history of Native Americans and native foods and the techniques, the natural history. So all of those studies helped me to develop the food that I have developed. And I knew that this was where I wanted to stay, was doing native foods and learning more about all aspects of it, the ceremony, the storytelling, well, of course, the cooking and the techniques that were all used. And of course, along with that comes the heartbreak that they as people have suffered for hundreds of years. So it's quite a basket of emotions in understanding Native history.
All right, hello. My name's John Farais. I'm a chef working with ingredients native to the Americas, as it has she's already mentioned. Tonight we're going to be doing curing salmon. It's a very simple process, and it's a very another unique way in using salmon. Tonight I have king salmon, and I also want to show you about the difference in the salmons. We have Atlantic salmon, which you'll see a lot of, and we also have Pacific salmon. And being out here on the West Coast, we have Pacific salmon, which is, well, it's considered the best salmon in the world, especially the king salmon. And I brought along a little PowerPoint. It's going to take a couple of minutes just to kind of give you a little bit of background about salmon. I'm really excited about the history and being able to show you what's the difference between Atlantic and Pacific salmon. So if you want to go ahead and start the PowerPoint, it's California's historical food. All right. Okay, so this is California's historical food, the salmon. It's been around for millions of years. It showed up in the Northwest, from what I've read, about 6 million years ago. And it's just recently, within the 6,000 years, has been the main source for people in the coastal West Coast. Now, the little rock impression there that you see actually was discovered in a cave in Europe. There's also the Atlantic salmon that has a long history also. That image in that carved into that rock is 25,000 years old. So that's part of the salmon history. Next, please. Next slide.
It should be up.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry. I'm looking at mine here. So what we catch out here is wild caught Pacific salmon. Now there's a difference between Atlantic and the Pacific. We see a lot of Atlantic salmon out here on the West Coast. Now Atlantic salmon has an old ancient history just like Pacific, but around the 1960s, the Atlantic salmon got overfished. And so it has since then become a market for farming salmon. So any salmon that you get that you'll see in the stores is farm raised. And there are situations with farm raised that can be good and can also be problematic. So but you get some very good salmon. If you're going to get farm raised salmon, you want to go as far north as you can, like up into Norway, into the cold areas, because that's where the fat will come onto the fish, in order to insulate itself. And that's what makes the juicy salmon, the nice fresh salmon. But there's also something with the Pacific salmon too that I wanted to mention, is that now a lot of the salmon these days is coming out of hatcheries. And so there's a mix of the hatchery salmon and the wild salmon. And so I guess what I'm saying is we want to be able to keep buying wild caught salmon. Next slide, please. And here's the difference with the kinds of the West Coast salmon. You've got the king salmon, which is also considered Chinook. That is the top of the line. That's the biggest salmon. That is the prize salmon. That is what goes into actually canned salmon. Usually, sometimes you'll get kita too, which is the chum. You'll see down below. Also, there's sockeye, which is the red salmon. That has a very red color. That's very distinct. Sockeye is also considered an excellent salmon. These are all considered excellent salmons, but they have different purposes because they're a little bit different in nature. And then you have the silver salmon, which is coho. It looks very similar it looks like a giant trout, which is also very good. And then you've got the pink salmon, which is a lot of the more common salmon that they use in the seafood platters and things like that, along with the chum, the kita, which is the next salmon down below. So all of this is wonderful salmon. And the best, I guess you could say, from the destination's point of view, would be the Copper River salmon. Copper River salmon, you can get sockeye, you can get king, and you can also get the silver salmon, the coho, from the Copper River. Copper River is considered unique in that any salmon that's in there has this special color to it. So Copper River is probably the one area that you would really want to get salmon. So for the next slide, please. And so as you can see, this is how salmon make their life, which is why they are a prized salmon. They are born in the creeks or in the little, I guess you could call them inlet waters. And then once they lay their eggs, they head out to once they are grown, they head out to the ocean. And as they're coming back, they go through this jump here, as you can see. I was in Marin. I lived in San Rafael for about 10 years, and it was salmon season, which is usually like around harvest time. And as I was getting out of my car, I watched this salmon skip across the rocks. I mean, so they're quite the athlete. And what they're doing is they're getting back to their original spawning grounds, which is where they were born, in these creeks and all these water inlets. So it's pretty amazing. And also, this is where the bears kind of wait on the side there, and they're waiting to catch any salmon that kind of jumps in the air their way. So it's nature at its best. The next slide, please. Now, the next slides are all about how salmon has gone, how salmon has been throughout these centuries with the Native Americans. This is a native fishing weir. They created these, and they had a special ceremony where they would let the first few salmon of the salmon season go through, and then they would catch what they wanted. It was always in belief that they respected the salmon's life in order to be able to come back again. And as long as they were careful about how many they caught, they always ensured that they would have salmon for the next season. Next slide, please. And so this is a very contemporary way of the way Native Americans now cook salmon. They fillet them and then spear them through with the stakes right up against the fire, which is probably one of the hottest parts of the fire. Is once they're embers, it runs very hot, and so they can keep them off to the side, away from the fire, next to the embers, and cook it nice and slow that way. Next slide, please. And so this is a historical picture of California natives and their catch with the salmon. So it's been, this shows you how important it was for them. Look at the size of those things too. Next one, please. And then the next one is about smoked salmon. This is a traditional way of smoking salmon. They built a house and laid a fire up in the corner or maybe down in the center, and they raised the racks up high so that it was just enough heat in order to smoke the salmon. Okay, so that is another way of treating salmon and the historical aspects of what salmon has done for the Native Americans and what throughout history and what it is today. So today we're going to cure salmon, and I've got a nice big piece of king salmon. It's beautiful. It's like I mentioned, it's the top of the line for the salmon family. And so this will make really nice. The fat in it is just right to where it gives off a nice taste, and it preserves really well. And so with today's recipe, we're going to have the fresh salmon along with some kosher salt. Now we want to use kosher salt because it's a big grain salt, and it'll kind of react evenly with the rest of the ingredients for the curing. So this is kosher salt. You can use regular salt or Himalayan salt, but it tends to get a little salty. So you do want to monitor that if you are using one of those regular salts. So I do recommend the big grain kosher salt, and then also sugar. So salt and sugar is the very basic curing ingredients. I'm using organic turbinado sugar, which is more of a raw, more unrefined sugar. And there's also flavorings that you could also add into all of this. You can use juniper berries, you can use thyme, you can use almost any ingredient that you're familiar with as far as a spice or an herb. It makes the taste a lot more personal, I guess you could say. I'm using Douglas fir tip needles. I love that piney taste. I love to make tea out of this. I love to make simple syrup out of this. So I'm going to be using Douglas fir fur tip needles. And what I've done is I've gotten some of the young tips on the Douglas fir. They're a real bright green, and they are at the tip of the tree, of the branches. And that's what you want to get, because that is the freshest tasting. Most conifers are high in vitamin C, so it's actually very healthy too, to make yourself some tea. So what you're going to do is you're going to snip off those tips, and you can cut them up and with a knife. You can let them dry and do it that way. Either way, you're going to get that nice piney smell for an excellent taste. It gives you that real outdoorsy feel. And if you like, we can do a little bit of lemon with citrus zest. You can add that in there. So what we're going to do now, we're going to get started. I got a bowl. I'm going to mix 1 cup of salt with 1 cup of sugar. So it's 1-to-1 for the salt and the sugar. I have a little bit of, I like to be adventurous, so I'm going to add a little bit of Salish smoked salt, just to add a little more intrigue. Salish is a Native American tribe up in the Washington State area that smokes their salt, and they're also smoke their fish, oddly enough. And so what I did here is I've got some, I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup. Let's see. Okay, 1/4 cup. And then I'm going to break it up a little bit. Just chop it up. Take it easy, because it'll jump all over the place. Okay, there we go. So we've got just the 3 ingredients. I'm not going to use lemon because I want to highlight the taste of the pine needles. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mix it. And we're going to lay the fish in it. Now you could do it this way in a bowl, or you can also put it on a little sheet pan. I have a little parchment paper, and we could lay some of this on the sheet pan. I'll do that this way. It's a little easier to see, I think. You want to do about half. Spread it out. So that's all there is to it right now. You're curing salmon. So we're going to.
John, we have a question. Are
Yes.
your Douglas fir tips dry or are they fresh?
These are dry. In order to store them and keep them and use them again, they are dry. So they are effective, both dry and fresh. So you can use them either way. Actually, like most herbs, if they're dry, they take on a little bit more flavor. They become stronger in flavor. So you can try it both ways, but dried would give it a lot more, would give it a bolder taste. So drying is good for 2 reasons, because of the bolder taste, and you can also store it. So this is the salmon here, sitting on half of the curing agent. And all we're going to do here now is just now we're going to work this in. Here we are. You want to make sure that you are getting it covered on all sides. It's nice and thick. Look at that. Okay. So really, there you are. That is, that's how you cure salmon. What we're going to do now is I'm going to use now, what you want to do now is you want to wrap it and you're going to put it away into the refrigerator for at least 24 hours. So 24 hours from when you put it in there, it'll be ready. You can keep it in longer too if you like. It'll get deeper in taste and probably a little bit saltier. And then when you do decide to take it out, you want to rinse it off a little bit, maybe with a wet towel, or just run it real, take some water in your hands and kind of rub it off that way, because it won't be any problem because most of your taste will already be in the salmon. So this is where we are now. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. It's kind of like almost playing in the sand. So I'm going to use, like I mentioned, you can use aluminum foil, you can use plastic wrap. I'm going to use cheesecloth. It's kind of a traditional way. I think we got it. Okay. There's an open end here somewhere. So as you see, just 3 ingredients and you can cure your salmon. Now, the idea for curing is that it will last a little bit longer. It'll be preserved, basically. And what we're doing is we're taking out the oils. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. Whoops. Okay.
We have another question, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you eat the cured salmon raw, or do you cook it, or both?
Yeah, no, it'll be ready to go. It'll be preserved. The oils will kind of would make it spoil, I guess you could say. So what this does, what the curing does, is it takes the oils out of there and it instills the flavor, because, you know, of course, salt is a preserving agent, and, you know, that goes way back in history. So people put a lot of things into salt to preserve it. And so that's basically what we're doing here, is we're preserving it, drawing out the oils, and actually kind of creating a new dish with salmon. And so what we're going to do is, let me do this again. Okay. Now. Okay. Oh. Now, here's another part. So now you can see I got it all wrapped. You could use plastic wrap, would do the same thing, and also aluminum foil. But the reason I use cheesecloth is because the oil will kind of seep through. If you're using plastic wrap or aluminum foil, the oils are going to kind of coagulate around the fish. So with cheesecloth, the oils will kind of leak through. And when you take this out of the cloth, it'll be drier than having to wipe it all down with the rag because of the oils. So that's why I use cheesecloth. It breathes a little bit. And like I said, it lets the oils escape. And how we're going to make that happen is we're going to press it. So this is the part that's critical. That's going to help. It's going to help it escape. The oils escape is putting some weight on it. So as you can see, I got the salmon here in cheesecloth. I put another tray on top. Then I put a weight on top of that. The weight, of course, is going to press down, and then that will release the oils. And that is the key part to curing salmon. Now, you could probably just leave it in the refrigerator, but you would probably need to leave it in a little bit longer if you're not using a press. It could work without a press. It'll just take a little bit longer, and you'll probably have a lot of that oil coagulating around the salmon. So basically, this is it. This is all that is done for curing salmon. It's very easy, very simple, and it's a technique that's been going on for thousands of years. Like I mentioned, basically you can take food and put it into salt and it would get preserved because a lot of the oils would be taken out of it. It's the oils that would make it rancid. So this is it. Here's your cured salmon. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to put it into the refrigerator for at least 24 hours. You should let the weight work its way onto the salmon and be able to crush it. I shouldn't say crush, but be able to gently press the oils out of it. And the oils would kind of dissipate to the sides because I have the cheesecloth. So I would recommend cheesecloth. But again, like I said, if it's simple enough to use plastic and aluminum foil, just go ahead and do that. And you can also press that too. So either way it'll work, but I enjoy the cheesecloth because I think eventually it'll turn out to be a lot less messier, a lot less mess.
We have a couple questions along the same vein. One is, can you cook the cured salmon? And if you cook it after curing it, does that cause any sort of issues? Is it kind of overkill?
It would probably dry out. I'm not sure. The idea of curing it is being able to get the freshest taste out of the salmon. If you wanted to go a step further, you could, I suppose, saute it real fast. I wouldn't want to cook it too much longer because there's no oil, there's a lot less oil in it. That would help keep it fresh when you would cook it, fry it or bake it, roast it. It would be in its own oils. But with curing, there's no more oils in there, or at least there's a lot less. So it's a lot drier to begin with. So I would be very careful if you wanted to do that. I won't say no, but if you want to try it, you can. I mean, if you're not feeling good about cured salmon, because basically it's one step down from fresh.
Yeah. We have another question about the texture. How does that change the texture of the fish?
Does it change the texture?
I mean, you know how cooked fish has a little meat to it and raw has a slightly different texture. When you cure it, what is that like?
Well, if you've ever if you've ever had gravlax, it's kind of similar to gravlax. It's very pliable. There is a little bit of an oiliness to it. So it does change in that it kind of compresses a little bit and it becomes a little more dense, I guess you could say, if you dense in flavor, in taste. If you've ever had gravlax and lox and bagels, that's salmon. That's basically cured salmon. Gravlax is a very similar process. It's basically curing. They call it smoked salmon, and you can do smoked salmon. That also changes the texture too. But with curing, you get, like I said, the closest thing to fresh. You're about one step down from fresh. And so you're getting that rich flavor. And the texture is a little bit different. It's, you know, a lot less. It's more compressed, I guess you could say. So
Okay.
it's that, I think that would be the difference.
And when they smoke salmon, are they using salt on it as well, or do they just use the heat from the fire?
No, you'd use the heat from the fire. What's the thing about smoked salmon is that there's a high heat and a low heat, or I think what they call a wet smoke and a dry smoke. Ideally you want to do smoking at around, I don't know, under 150 degrees and take your time in doing it. That's where you get the deepest, thickest smoke. And there's another way to smoke salmon where you would put it on a grill, take it off, get the fire in part of the grill, put the salmon on the lower end of the heat, and then put in some water down below, and you kind of get a steaming effect with the smoke. That way, you know, doing that using a regular grill. So there are at least two different ways to smoke salmon. But the best way to get the deepest taste is to take advantage of the smoke is the low heat. Low heat, low and slow, as they say.
We've got a busy chat with questions. Another question is
Really?
there
Good.
a specific type of salmon that lends itself better to the curing process? Or are any of the ones you mentioned, would they all work?
I would go with either Chinook. Well, I'm sorry, that's king salmon. Chinook is king salmon, or the the second one that I mentioned here is the Sockeye. The Sockeye salmon and the king salmon are your best bets for a good cure. They have the best taste, the deepest taste, the most fat. Because as you go down the line, there's less fat in the salmon, and that kind of helps create the energy of the taste, meeting the cure, meeting the smoke, meeting the fire. You know, when you have king salmon or the sockeye salmon, they are high and rich in fats. That also helps makes it healthy, makes it taste great. Those would be my top two choices for that. The other ones are for different purposes. The chum and the pink, you know, those are used in like you can use them for salmon cakes, and you know, other things besides. You could use any of them really to eat, but the top two choices would be the king salmon and the sockeye.
Okay, another question.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Why don't you go ahead and finish?
I was going to say it's just a matter of color, taste, color and the oils, and where they travel. You know, because the colder the water, the thicker, the fattier the fish, the better the taste. So that's really the main difference between all those fish.
Okay.
Between all the salmon. Go ahead.
Okay, so the next question is, once we make this beautiful cured salmon, are we using this as an appetizer? So for like little bites, or would you use this as a main dish?
I would use it as an appetizer. I don't see why not. Why you couldn't use it as a main dish. It's different eating cured salmon than it is sitting down and roasting it for dinner, a whole piece, a whole 4 to 6 to 8 ounces of whatever you would have for dinner. It's different roasting it and eating it that way than curing it. Curing it it's a very rich taste. So little bites at a time are a lot better with cured salmon. So you could probably put salmon on a cracker or put it on a nice little crostini, or even of course a bagel, which is the way to really everybody seems to know about salmon, cured salmon. Basically, they call it gravlax. So it's mostly an appetizer, but if you put it on a bagel, you're probably going to get a pretty good meal out of it.
Excellent. Do you have any wine recommendations to go with that?
Any what?
Wine recommendations to go with our cured salmon?
Oh, there we go. That's a good one. I would go with a rosé type of wine, or maybe a little bit of a Chardonnay that is not oaky. Because you don't want to clash the curing and all of the tastes that you instilled in the curing and have a wine overpower that. You want to kind of have a wine to complement it. So a white wine that's not cured in a barrel, that's not aged in a barrel, would be a good wine. Almost any of the wines, I don't know, you may want to try a drier rosé with that, or maybe a little bit of a sweeter rosé and a drier white, because whites tend to have a little more body to them than the rosés. But I would say somewhere in there. So you want to stick in the middle of the spectrum for drinking wine with the salmon. Like I said, I would want to go with a big oaky Chardonnay, but something that's easy to take and that would complement and I think what would complement it would be like the mid-range of the wines.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, good questions. So, ladies, that was it. It was a quick one, and I hope that means that it was easy enough for you to want to try.
Well, thank you so much. That was really fascinating. Now I have something to do this weekend.
Yay, yeah, give it a try. It's very easy, as you saw. And, there's hardly any mistakes that you can make on it. I mean, just equal parts salt and sugar, and add your flavorings, spices, herbs, cayenne pepper, juniper berries, fennel. You can add any of that in there, and it'll have that overnight mix to be able to really bring out some unique flavor. I love doing the Douglas fir tip. It's a great taste. It always reminds me of the outdoors, and of course, you can't get more outdoorsy than salmon.
Well, thank you so much, John, and I'd like to thank everybody who participated tonight. The program survey link is up in the chat, so if anyone has time, we'd really appreciate you giving it a look-see and turning it in. And that's it for tonight, and hopefully we'll see you at our next one, which is making acorn nochi.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our next class. That would be the fourth of 4 classes. It's with acorn flour. I forage and I process my own acorn flour. And I'm going to be making Italian dumplings, what they call gnocchi, with acorn flour. And we'll probably do a little bit of a burnt butter sage butter with that. And I'll eat it right in front of you.
And that class will be on June 7th at 6 p.m. You can check us out on mendolibrary.org and look in our events section. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.